He first saw her on a Tuesday that couldn't decide between being summer or fall, the kind of day where the sky glared too brightly and the wind tried to apologize. She was standing just outside the campus library, fumbling with a canvas tote bag that kept slipping off her shoulder, its contents threatening to spill papers, a travel mug, an overworked laptop with the corner cracked. The strap of her low-heeled shoe had snapped, and her hair, once likely pinned neatly, had come partially undone in a halo of flyaways. She looked irritated, distracted, imperfect. And he couldn't stop staring. Julian was 22 and still trying to figure out if he was someone worth paying attention to. He was a literature student, underwhelmed by his peers and unimpressed with professors who quoted dead men like scripture. She didn't look like any of them. She wasn't young enough to blend in with students or formal enough to be a lecturer. She looked like she had somewhere better to be but had long since stopped expecting to arrive. He watched her curse under her breath, trying to balance the broken shoe, the tote, the chaos. And before he knew what he was doing, Julian crossed the quad and knelt in front of her. "You need tape," he said, reaching into his coat pocket. "Duct or scotch?" She blinked down at him, stunned. "You carry tape?" "I carry everything." He grinned as if it were the most normal thing in the world and held up two options. She laughed, but it was brittle, guarded. "I'll take the duct. Scotch is for broken hearts and failed projects. Tell that to my poetry professor." He taped the strap as best he could, his fingers grazing hers once, lightly. Her hand didn't move. When he stood, she thanked him with a politeness that felt like an afterthought, a reflex. She started to turn away, but he saw it, the flicker. Not quite a smile, not yet, but something alive, raw, breaking through the film that seemed to coat her edges. He called after her. "I'm Julian." She paused, looked back. "I didn't ask." "Maybe you will next time." She rolled her eyes, but her lips twitched. The bag shifted on her shoulder. She kept walking. The next time came faster than he expected. She was at the same bench near the student cafe, tapping her foot to a song only she could hear, reading a book that looked older than both of them. He hesitated, unsure if she remembered him, unsure if he'd imagined the look in her eye, but something pulled him forward. "Is the shoe holding up?" he asked as he approached, hands in pockets. She glanced up. "Barely. But your tape job got me through the week." He nodded. "Julian," he reminded her. She hesitated. "Marla." "Nice to meet you, Marla, who doesn't ask for names." That time, she did smile. Not a flash or a courtesy, but something cracked open. Her teeth showed slightly, and the skin around her eyes creased like it remembered how to fold. It wasn't a pretty smile, it was too sudden, too real. But it hit him in the gut. She seemed startled by it herself, as though her face wasn't used to the expression. The next few meetings weren't planned. Or maybe they were, though neither admitted it. He began timing his library sessions to when he might see her. She started sitting near the cafe, claiming better light. They spoke about books at first, safe terrain. Then about coffee preferences, favorite movies, the smell of rain. Each exchange chipped away at the space between them. Marla was 42. She didn't offer that right away, but it clung to her, her patience, her edge, her way of not needing to be understood. Julian found it magnetic. She was the kind of woman who didn't ask questions she didn't want answered, who laughed with her whole chest when something was actually funny and didn't bother laughing when it wasn't. She didn't flirt like girls his age. She didn't hide insecurity under layers of sarcasm or shy glances. She looked at him with curiosity, not hunger. "You're not old," he said once when age came up. She arched a brow. "I'm not young, either." "Neither am I, really." "Please," she scoffed. "You're 20-something. Everything still bends without breaking." He shrugged. "Only if you ignore the cracks." She studied him then. "And do you want me to ignore them?" "No," he said, and meant it. The shift came in late October. The sky had gone soft with dusk, and they were walking together after coffee, a casual detour that had become habit. She was wearing a scarf he hadn't seen before, burgundy and threadbare, and she seemed lighter somehow, like something had unclenched in her chest. He told a story about a professor who'd accidentally emailed the entire class his grocery list instead of the syllabus. She laughed, really laughed, and covered her mouth too late. Her eyes lit up. Her breath caught. And for the first time in years, the laugh didn't fade into a sigh. That was the moment. She stopped walking. Looked at him. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something but didn't trust herself to say it. "What?" he asked, teasing, but gently. "Nothing," she said, shaking her head. "It's just been a while." He stepped closer, instinct overriding thought. "Since what?" Her eyes didn't leave his. "Since I smiled without needing a reason." Julian swallowed. The silence between them was a thread pulled tight. He could have kissed her, but didn't. He didn't need to. The moment already felt like too much. She exhaled. "Don't ruin it." "I won't," he whispered. She didn't walk away this time. It started as a quiet thing, this need between them. Like water soaking into a stone, slow, invisible, unstoppable. They didn't call it dating. There were no declarations, no drunken confessions or breathless text messages. It was a secret stitched together by habits, a shared coffee at 8:45 a.m., a walk through the sculpture garden when the light fell just right, a stolen hour at the far corner of the city library where nobody ever went anymore. She never asked him to keep it hidden. He never offered to drag it into the open. It just became a rule neither of them said aloud. What they had didn't belong to the world. Julian told no one. Not his roommate, not his older sister, not even Aria, who he told everything else. Marla lived on the edge of campus in an aging apartment building, where the walls were thin but the neighbors quiet, and they would spend hours on her couch or bed, fully clothed sometimes not, talking about literature, music, loneliness, memory, regret. She taught art part-time at a community program a few miles away, not affiliated with the university, and he loved watching her hands when she described her students, those hands that knew how to shake clay, braid canvas, tape broken shoes. But secrets, even gentle ones, eventually press against the walls. Julian's own wounds weren't as neatly buried as he thought. His parents had divorced when he was 16, violently, publicly, and with no winners. His mother was distant, brittle. His father was a ghost in a different city. Julian learned early how to make himself smaller, less visible, to avoid being collateral. That same instinct now kept him silent about Marla. He didn't want to see the winces, the judgment, the sideways smiles. He didn't want his friends asking questions with answers that felt like apologies. Marla, meanwhile, had been married once. Briefly. A man named Sean, a decade behind her now, who'd loved her like she was a photograph, easy to hold still, easier to frame, impossible to change. She'd left. There were no children, no messy court dates, just a trail of what-ifs and an old piano she couldn't bring herself to sell. She told Julian these things on a rainy night while he dried her hair with a t-shirt because the power had gone out and the heater with it. He listened with a kind of reverence, not pity, and when she finished, he kissed her fingers. Neither of them used the word love, but it sat between them anyway, unspoken and pulsing. Trouble arrived like it always does, with something small, something harmless. It was a campus bulletin board. Someone had taken a photo, grainy and off-angle, of Julian and Marla sitting too close on the cafe bench, her hand barely brushing his knee, his eyes on her mouth as she spoke. The photo was anonymous. No caption. Just tacked to a student commons wall like it belonged there. Someone noticed. Then more people did. Julian didn't see it first. Aria did. She texted him, then showed up at his apartment without knocking. "You need to see this," she said, shoving her phone into his hand. At first, he couldn't process it. The photo was just out of focus enough to be deniable. But he recognized the scarf Marla had been wearing, the way he sat slightly forward when she talked, the coffee cup he always borrowed from her because he liked how her lipstick smudged the rim. "Is this real?" Aria asked, not cruelly, but not kindly either. He didn't answer. "Julian, she's, what, 40? 42. Jesus." He looked up. Don't. I'm just saying, people are going to talk. They already are. So let them. Arya shook her head. You don't get it. She's not just older. She's established. She's not part of this place. You're going to look like a kid trying to prove something, and she's going to look like. Don't finish that sentence. She didn't. But the silence said everything. That night, he went to Marla's place. She met him at the door, hair damp from a shower, worry already shadowing her features. I know, she said before he even spoke. Someone from the cafe called me. He stepped inside. I didn't tell anyone. I believe you. They sat. Didn't touch. The weight between them felt heavier than usual. Not guilt, something more brittle. Do you want to stop? He asked, voice low. Marla didn't answer for a long time. Finally, she looked at him and said, I want to stop thinking that wanting you makes me reckless. Is that what you feel? No, she shook her head. But it's what they'll say. People don't care that you make me laugh, or that you remember how I take my coffee, or that you listen. They'll only see what they want to. That I should know better. That you're some poor boy with a mother complex. I'm not, he said. You're not my mother. You're the first person who makes me feel like I don't have to prove anything. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. That's the cruelest part. They'll ruin this before it ever has a chance. Then let them try. She smiled. It wasn't like the one from before. It was quieter, stitched with fear. But it was still a smile. The next day, he got the letter. Printed. Slid under his dorm room door. No return address. We know. Doesn't look good, Julian. You should think about your future before someone else does it for you. Typed. Anonymous. Cowardly. He held it in his hands for a long time, then folded it and put it in his coat pocket. He didn't tell Marla. Not yet. They met more carefully after the letter. No more cafe benches, no more walks across campus. Their routine slipped underground, odd hours, back entrances, her apartment with the blinds closed tight. But what could have felt like hiding turned into something richer, stranger, and more dangerous, intimacy. Without the noise of the world, without distractions or performance, what remained between Julian and Marla was unbearably sharp. Their silences grew louder. Their laughter, rarer but deeper. And at night, when the rest of the city stilled, they spoke like two people who no longer believed in time. Julian started bringing books she'd never read. She taught him how to press charcoal across rough paper. They fell asleep mid-sentence more than once. There were moments when she'd pause, mid-gesture, and just look at him like she was memorizing. Like she knew this couldn't last. I don't want this to be a rebellion, she said once, curled against his chest, her fingers tracing the faded scar near his collarbone. I don't want to be your rebellion. He didn't answer right away. Then, you're not. You're the first decision I've made that didn't feel like survival. Marla exhaled slowly, a kind of grief in the sound. You say things like that, and I forget to be afraid. Then let me keep saying them. Still, the cracks kept widening. On campus, Julian felt the air change when he walked past certain people. Glances lingered. Conversations quieted. A pair of junior girls whispered when he entered the philosophy building. Someone in his poetry seminar read a fictional piece about an older woman seducing a student with sad eyes and a savior complex. Laughter followed. Julian didn't flinch, but he didn't stay afterward either. He hadn't told Marla about the letter. Not yet. It sat folded in a book on his nightstand, like a secret inside a secret. He told himself it wasn't fear, it was strategy. He wanted to shield her, give them time to breathe. But the weight of not telling her felt heavier than the letter itself. The pressure hit a boil one Friday night. They were in her apartment, lights low, a record humming from the corner. Marla was sketching something, he didn't ask what, and Julian was reading but not absorbing. The letter pressed against his chest like a second heartbeat. Finally, he said, someone sent me a warning. She looked up. What kind of warning? He pulled the folded paper from his coat and handed it to her. She read it once. Again. Her face didn't change, but the pencil in her hand snapped in two. How long have you had this? A week. Marla stood up. Moved to the kitchen. Poured water. Drank it. Came back. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to give it power. And you thought lying to me was better? I didn't lie. You didn't trust me. Julian stood. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is being dragged into a witch hunt without even knowing it. Do you understand what this kind of thing could cost me? I'm not tenured. I'm not faculty, technically, but I teach at a partner program. All it takes is one phone call from the wrong person who decides this makes me unfit to be around students. I'm a legal adult. I'm not your student. No laws are being broken. Marla's voice went low. You think that matters to people who already think I've done something wrong? They stared at each other. The space between them suddenly enormous. He stepped closer. Then let's go somewhere else. Anywhere. We don't need this place. She looked away. Don't say things you can't mean long term. I mean it. You mean it now. They were interrupted by a knock on the door. Neither moved. Another knock. Louder. Marla crossed the room and opened it without checking the peephole. A woman stood there, short, tightly wound, eyes wide with disbelief. Jesus Christ, she said, looking at Julian. It is you. Marla froze. Sophie. Oh my God. You didn't tell me it was him. Julian blinked. Who are you? She's my friend, Marla said quickly. From the community center. Friend? Sophie shot her a look. We used to teach workshops together. Then she started disappearing every Friday night. Julian stepped back, brain racing. You told her about me? Marla's jaw clenched. Not exactly. Sophie looked between them. You know this is going to get out, right? If it hasn't already. Neither answered. Sophie laughed. Later that night, when the shock had worn off but sleep still refused to come, Marla whispered, We're not built for the shadows. Julian turned to face her. Then let's stop pretending we need them. She didn't reply. But she didn't let go of his hand either. 2 nights later, it happened. It was just past 10 p.m., and they thought they were alone. They'd taken a long walk, choosing the garden paths behind the art building, quiet, empty, and always dimly lit. Julian had his coat wrapped around her shoulders, and she had her arm around his waist. They were laughing about something ridiculous, his freshman year poetry, maybe, or the fact that she couldn't stand blueberries. Then a motion light snapped on. And across the path, half shielded by a stone arch, someone stood watching them. The figure didn't speak. Just stared. Then turned and walked briskly into the shadows. Julian froze. Did you see? I saw, Marla said. Who was it? I don't know. But they'll say they did. They didn't speak the rest of the walk. They didn't need to. The campus bloomed with scandal before the flowers did. By Monday morning, the photograph had found its way online, sharper this time, clearer, with enough contrast to recognize not just Julian and Marla, but the space between them that no longer existed. It was posted to a student forum under the thread title, When Your TA is Sleeping with the Art Lady. Hundreds of comments followed. Most were the usual garbage, sarcasm, half-informed guesses, and ugly jokes disguised as satire. But some were worse. Thoughtful. Judgy. Cold. By noon, the dean's office had summoned Julian for a conversation. It wasn't an investigation, they assured him, just a discussion. By 2 o'clock, the coordinator at Marla's art program had temporarily suspended her sessions to allow for clarification of recent events. No one said she was guilty. They didn't have to. The language had already judged her. That night, Marla didn't cry. She paced. Smoked half a cigarette on her balcony before dropping it into a cup of wine she never drank. Julian sat on her couch, trying not to clench his jaw. "We're being dissected," she said finally. "Like we're some case study in failure. We haven't failed. They don't care. They just want the spectacle. Then let them choke on it." She turned sharply. "You think defiance is enough?" "No," he said, rising to his feet. "I think love is." Marla flinched at the word. "You can't say that like it fixes anything," she said. "This isn't a movie, Julian. You don't walk into the sunset and get applause. You get closed doors. You get whispered about. You get. You." His voice broke. "I get you." She looked away, jaw trembling. "Say it's not worth it," he said quietly. "If it isn't, I'll go. I won't make you pay for something I wanted." Marla said nothing for a long time. Then, softly, "You didn't make me do anything. I came to you." "Then don't leave me alone in this." She didn't promise. She didn't speak at all. But when he sat down again, she came to him, wrapped her arms around him from behind, and pressed her face into his neck. They stayed like that for a long time, until the outside world shrank. The reckoning came at the worst possible time. Julian had been chosen months ago as a student speaker for the upcoming interdepartmental conference, the kind that drew donors, faculty, and news cameras. It was to be held at the City Museum, a black tie event with panels, keynotes, and an open bar disguised as networking. Marla had agreed to go, before everything. "Just to hear you speak," she'd said. "And maybe to judge your tie choice." Now, the tie was on, the words were prepared, and the City Museum's chandeliered halls were packed with people who only half smiled when they saw him. He saw her before she saw him. Marla stood near the back wall in a sleek black dress, simple and elegant, hair up, earrings small but firm. She looked like herself, but harder, like someone forced to armor herself in grace. When their eyes met, she gave him the smallest nod, just enough to say, "I'm still here." Then the coordinator spotted her. "Ms. Grayson," she said, lips taut. "I didn't realize you'd be attending." "I was invited," Marla said evenly. "To support Mr. Vale?" "Yes." "Well," the woman said with an over-practiced smile, "we expect a professional tone throughout the evening." "Considering the recent context." Marla held her gaze. "Of course. Wouldn't want anyone mistaking art for feeling." Julian nearly laughed but didn't. He took the stage 20 minutes later. He spoke on literature and identity, about how words fail us when we don't give them the right shape, about how narratives break when we lie to ourselves about who belongs in them. And then, somewhere near the end, he paused. The silence stretched. He looked up. Right at her. "I was told to keep this academic," he said into the microphone. "To remain neutral. To focus on craft. But that's not what literature is. It's not neutral. It's raw. It's risk. And sometimes, if we're lucky, it's love." Gasps. Whispers. A few eyes turned toward Marla, but she didn't flinch. Julian continued. "I've been told this year that my choices will define me. That who I choose to stand beside may cost me comfort, position, or safety. If that's true, if honesty costs me that much, then maybe the system wasn't safe to begin with." The room fell into full silence. Not polite. Not forced. Real. He ended the talk without another word. No thank yous. No fake humility. Just walked off the stage and toward the edge of the crowd. Every step felt like a decision. When he reached Marla, he offered his hand. And she, knowing every eye was on her, every breath held, reached back. Fingers interlaced. No words were exchanged. They left the hall together. No one stopped them. Outside, it was raining. Not dramatically, just a quiet, persistent drizzle that soaked the sidewalks and blurred the streetlights. They walked in silence for 3 blocks. Finally, Julian said, "Well, that was a choice." Marla laughed, low and breathless. "You absolute fool. Regret it?" "No," she said, then added, "but you might." "I'd rather regret the truth than live on lies." She stopped walking. Turned to him. "I don't know how this ends," she said. "I do." He leaned in and kissed her, gently, in the middle of the wet sidewalk, under a broken street lamp, where nobody was watching. Or maybe everyone was. It didn't matter anymore. There was no grand finale. No resolution neatly wrapped in a ribbon. What followed the conference was more like an unraveling, slow, quiet, unavoidable. Julian returned to class, but the room had changed. Professors stopped calling on him. Some students stopped speaking to him altogether. Others spoke too much, their voices loud with false admiration or gossipy interest. A few asked if it was all a stunt for attention. Marla, meanwhile, was quietly phased out. The art center restructured its schedule. Her classes paused indefinitely. The emails she received were curt, laced with bureaucratic sympathy. No one outright accused her of anything unethical, because they couldn't. But the implication rotted every sentence. She packed up her supplies one day, alone, in a studio she once called sacred. No farewell. No protest. Just silence. Julian helped her carry boxes down 3 flights of stairs. Neither of them said what they were thinking, that maybe honesty wasn't enough. They stayed together, for a while. Long enough to make it real. Long enough to try. They lived in that liminal space between disaster and peace, the calm after the burn, where everything still smolders but nothing yet crumbles. He came to her apartment most nights. She met him off campus. They stopped going to cafes and started cooking together, badly but joyfully. He'd read while she drew. She'd play old jazz while he washed dishes. It began to resemble something whole. But even love, real as it is, has weight. And they carried more than just each other. "You're going to graduate soon," she said one night, folding laundry with uncharacteristic precision. "Then what?" "I haven't decided." "You should." "I'd rather stay." She paused, then said softly, "That's not a plan." He moved to her. Took her hands. "Neither is living like we're always dodging something." Marla didn't argue. She didn't promise either. She'd learned, maybe the hard way, that love wasn't a shield. And that sometimes, it wasn't even enough to keep the doors open. It ended on a Tuesday, the same day of the week they'd first met. Not in anger. Not betrayal. Just a slow breath and a long look. They sat on her couch, knees touching. The silence between them wasn't bitter. It was almost kind. "I think I'm scared of becoming your detour," she said. "That someday you'll look back and wonder what you missed while you were trying to prove this was possible." "I'll never regret you," he said. "But you might need to outgrow me." "I don't want to." "You don't get to choose what you outgrow." He didn't answer. Because she was right. And he hated her for being right, and loved her more for saying it. She didn't cry. Not when he left. Not when the door clicked behind him. But he did. Outside, the sky was soft and gray, like the whole world was waiting for something to break. They spoke once more. Months later. A letter. His handwriting. Her name on the envelope. "Marla. I don't know if you kept the scarf. I don't know if you think of me when it rains. I do. They say love doesn't always last. Maybe that's true. But I also know that whatever this was, you made me feel more alive than anything I've ever known. You said once we weren't built for the shadows. Maybe we weren't. But in them, you lit every corner of me. I hope you're still painting. I hope you're smiling again. Julian _. She didn't write back. But she kept the letter. And the scarf. And when she walked past the cafe where they used to sit, she sometimes looked at the bench and smiled, without needing a reason. Love, sometimes, is the right thing at the wrong time. Or maybe it's just the real thing that couldn't stay. Either way, the question lingers. If you had the chance again, would you choose each other, knowing how it ends? The answer is yours.